when we're in a game, be in the game. Watch the game. See what's happening. Every time you pick up that stupid tablet, you are now leaving the game and you're entering a selfish realm of the gratification of finding out what happened on your play. You've separated yourself from the game. You've separated yourself from the team. Now, the intent is good because the player's trying to improve. But as you said, that's why you practice. That's why you have intermissions. That's why you break down things after games. But in the game, the only way you could ever get better is to actually watch and see the game unfold. That's what Tortorella was saying. He hated the fact that they have him on the bench too. Do not disengage from your team. Do not disengage from the game, even if it's coming from a place of improvement. There's a time and place for that, and I'm 100% with you there.
That'll be a suspension. That'll be a fine. Nyland going ballistic. He's a freaking madman.
I'm Chris Nyland, and this is the Raw Knuckles Podcast. All right, today, Raw Knuckles Podcast special guest from New York City. He's co-host of Michael Kay Show on ESPN New York. He has his own podcast called Game Misconduct. Also does pre- and post-game shows for the Rangers, and at times does play-by-play for the Rangers. Don LaGreca, welcome to the show. Awesome that you took the time today. Thank you.
No, it's an honor, man. I followed your career. I'm a big fan. This is really cool for me. Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. So, a little research, and I knew Don LaGreca. I didn't know all that you were doing, to be honest with you. But New York, right? Covering sports in New York. I mean, it couldn't be a better place. Let's say Boston probably is a better place.
Right.
But what do you got? Like 9 different sports teams, right? From football, baseball, hockey.
Oh yeah, between the 4 major sports, we've got 9. All the fans are passionate. All the fans complain, "Why aren't you leading the show with our team?" and you've got a different variety, right? You got the Yankees who are always up on top, and the Mets and Jets that are always struggling, and Islanders struggling, Rangers on top. So you got the big brother, you got little brother, you've got teams that have been around for 100 years. It is really incredible. I'm so fortunate. There's never a time where we're wondering what the heck to talk about.
There's never a dull moment. And
no.
as sports analysts, apparently, we're supposed to be impartial. But growing up, what were you a fan? Were you a fan of the Mets or the Yankees? Were you a fan of the Rangers or the Islanders?
There you go. All right, because my life has been topsy-turvy. I grew up a Met, Giant, and Devil fan.
Okay.
I got to the Devils a little bit later because my dad wasn't a big hockey fan. So when the Devils came to New Jersey, I kind of took it upon myself in '82 to follow them. So those were the teams that I was so passionate about. So I'm on the Michael Kay Show. He's the Yankee announcer. For 16 years, I did pre and post for Jets. And for the last going on 20 years, I've been working with the Rangers. So if you had told 18-year-old Don LaGreca I'd be doing those things, I'd be like, "No way, man! I'm not working with those teams. You kidding me?" And now I'm sitting there at a Ranger game, hanging out, talking, swapping stories with Adam Graves. Where 20 years ago, I'm cursing him out for scoring in Game 5 against the Devils in '97. So it's funny where your career and life kind of intertwine.
Yeah, there's no question. And I look at my own case, growing up in Boston, being a Boston fan, loving the Bruins, wanting to be a Bruin, and I get drafted by Montreal, and then the rest is history. I mean, I did become a Bruin near the end of my career.
Yes.
But I was all beat up from my time in New York, to be honest with you. I've looked at a few of your things. You're very passionate, no question about it. Very passionate, and I saw a couple of your rants, and now I get this. Like, I worked in radio here for 10 years. That's why I moved back to Montreal. I had a show on TSN called Off the Cuff, and I did that for 10 years, and I was fired after the pandemic. Well, during the pandemic. I was doing my show from home, and it was time to go back in the studio, and they said we require everybody to be vaccinated. So I wasn't getting vaccinated, so I got fired. Started the podcast. So I hear, and I've seen a few times, people call you out for your rant saying, "Oh, that's all made up. That's bullshit." I know on my own end, I got some of the same stuff like that on my radio show. Like if I go off on something, people say, "Oh, that's made up just for radio." You get a lot of that in New York, right, with the passionate fan base. But you deliver a passionate message when you're on there. And I've seen it. I love it. And I think the people connect with that, right?
Yeah, because listen, I'm a fan. I grew up a fan. I got into this business because I'm a fan. And I'm an opinionated SOB. And I think that makes for a nice combination of sports radio. And, sometimes I just lose it because, I'll get accused, oh, he's just faking it for ratings. He's just faking it to go viral. Chris, if that were the case, I'd do it every day, but I can't. And I never know 30 seconds before it's going to happen that it's going to happen. It's just that I've got a short fuse, which I'm sure you could relate. Yeah. And when I lose it because radio is a very personal medium. It's not TV where you prepare for 4 minutes and you're gone. I'm on the air for 3.5 hours. The fans know my kids' names. They know my wife's name. They knew where I grew up. They know my backstory, because if you commit to listen to sports radio, I think you want to know and feel like you're a part of the family. And family at the dinner table have disagreements and they lose it. And I think that's when you feel really comfortable. When you're trying to be something you're not, or if you're trying to protect yourself, it's really difficult for you to be able to let out who you are as a person. And as soon as you let your guard down, those are the things that, to me, happen. You lose your temper, you get in arguments. And so the best compliment I can ever get from somebody is a buddy of mine who says, "Don, I remember you had that same rant in sophomore year of high school and you melted down in the cafeteria." It's like, yeah, because I'm just being me. And sometimes the worst of me comes out. I watch him back and I'm like, oh my God, how embarrassing. But, people like it and it happens and I live with it.
Yeah. Listen, it's important to be true to yourself and who you are. That's for sure. And I certainly am opinionated myself. And, oftentimes people get a little irritated with that, but I don't have a problem with that. I'm true to myself, and that's what counts. And I hear that in certainly in your situation. We talk about sports in New York and the passion of the fan base and sports radio all over North America. And there are some cities, certainly New York being one, Boston, another one, the cities that have all the major sports teams and they have sports radio in them. Is it a dying medium now? And I know probably New York might be a little different, but with all the podcasts, everything else, so many other options now. Do you see it one day no longer having the AM dial in your vehicle?
I don't think it'll ever go away, but it's definitely changed dramatically. When I first started in the business 30 years ago, I think the audience wanted to be educated by someone they perceived to be in the know, somebody that knew more than they did. But now, as you said, with podcasts, with social media, I think the fan isn't looking to be educated. They're just looking for sheer opinion. And that's the difference, is that I'm not going to come on and say, though the Knicks are playing the Sixers tonight. They know that. They want to know what I think. They want to know who they think is going to win the game and why. And even guests, like we can go out and try to get guests, but we get players, but they've got their own podcasts. They're tweeting out information. So it's just, as long as there are people that are passionate, that have an opinion on sports, there are going to be people that want to hear that opinion. So sports radio will always exist. But as far as the way you do it, it's got to change. If you come on the air thinking you're a know-it-all and that you're going to educate the listener, you're going to bore them to tears and they're going to turn it off. They're going to listen to Chris Nowlin because they want to know of whether he thinks the Bruins are going to beat the Leafs tonight and why. And then he's going to want to listen, or she is going to want to listen the next day for you to kill them if they don't win the game. That's, as long as that exists, I think sports radio is going to be fine. So
some of the greatest rivalries in sports, obviously, the Yankees and the Red Sox, are one of them, no question about it. I think that it's faded some because the Red Sox are no longer spending money the
Right.
cheap bastards, which, I think that they're trying to be the Tampa Bay Rays or Milwaukee when it comes to putting a lineup out there. And I don't know how long the fans are going to put up with that in Boston. So that's going to get interesting. The Rangers Bruins at a time was pretty hot. But if you look at, Rangers Devils, but today's main foe for the New York Rangers, who would it be?
Well, it's a great question because they haven't played the Islanders in the postseason in 30 years. So you got to really be old school to get it stirred up. Probably the Devils, just because of the recent battles. Last year, Rangers blowing a 2-0 series lead. You saw what happened this year with Rempe's, hitting Siegenthaler and all that. So right now, it's probably the Devils. But it fluctuates because for a time it was Tampa, believe it or not. The Lightning were the team that stood in the way of them being able to win a cup in 2015, and Tampa knocked them off in the conference final a couple of years ago. So it's really fluctuated because, the Islanders haven't been good for a long time. The Devils had their decade in which they didn't do very much. Pittsburgh can be up there for sure when they play. So it really, Chris, it really fluctuates. I think if we get a really cool series between Carolina and the Rangers, I think that can really elevate it because there's so many former Rangers. You've got D'Angelo, and even though Foster's hurt, and they've got so many former Rangers on the Hurricanes. But it's a great question because it really depends on what year. So there's several teams where if we were having this conversation, 30 years ago, Rangers Islanders were at a fever pitch with Potvin sucks and all that. But God, it's those teams, the Islanders have just not been good enough, or they haven't been good enough at the same time for it to get to that point. And I really miss that. I do. Because I don't think Ranger fans hate another fan base as much as they hated the Islanders back in the day.
Are you ready to take your love for hockey to the next level? Join the Fight Club Raw Knuckles exclusive Patreon to unlock amazing perks like ad-free episodes, bonus interviews, and even a chance to win a game day experience with me in the Habs Cave. Don't miss out on this ultimate hockey experience. Looking at these New York Rangers here, and I remember a game in what was it, last year, and one thing that bothers the shit out of me with hockey is when players come back to the bench and they pick up that fucking iPad. I smash that fucking thing to pieces. It drives me out of my mind. And I loved it when Zibanejad went in, didn't score, and he came back to the bench and picked it up. And Chris Kreider grabbed it and fucking threw it. Like, I thought that was one of the best sequences of the season as far as a replay. And what do you think about that when you look at today's player? And, back in the day, and I know the game has changed some, and these kids are visual and all that crap. But you know what? I don't think those things should be allowed on the bench, one. And two, if a guy has an issue, go in between periods, talk to the coach, let me see it. I just think it takes away from the game. When you get back to the bench, one, catch your breath, drink some water, talk to your line mate about what happened, and clear it up between periods. Not in the fucking bench. I just absolutely hate that part of the game.
It's the same philosophy with I have a 6-year-old son who loves the iPad, and there's a time and place for everything. But when things are going on and we're outside or we're by the pool or we're playing soccer or baseball outside, and then every time he wants to grab that tablet, I take it from him like, live life, buddy. That's not life. That's a break from life. When we're in a game, be in the game. Watch the game. See what's happening. Every time you pick up that stupid tablet, you are now leaving the game and you're entering a selfish realm of the gratification of finding out what happened on your play. You've separated yourself from the game. You've separated yourself from the team. Now, the intent is good because the player's trying to improve. But as you said, that's why you practice. That's why you have intermissions. That's why you break down things after games. But in the game, the only way you could ever get better is to actually watch and see the game unfold. That's what Tortorella was saying. He hated the fact that they have him on the bench too. Do not disengage from your team. Do not disengage from the game, even if it's coming from a place of improvement. There's a time and place for that, and I'm 100% with you there.
Well, you brought up his name, and I love old school coaches. Again, I think they tend to have to baby guys today to the extent that I don't know. But John Tortorella, his time there, and certainly his emotions when we talk about who was the reporter, Larry.
Oh, Larry Brooks.
Larry Brooks, yeah. Him and Brooks going back and forth. I mean, and he has it out with one in Philadelphia now when the guy called out Hayes or something for something. Anyway, John in the media, I think he can be good at times with him, but boy, it always seems so adversarial. Do you blame him?
No, well, yes and no. I mean, it's part of the job, unfortunately. I understand that we can be very irritating. And I always got along with John because I never took anything personally. He just one time we were, I don't know where we were, on the road, and there were 4 of us in a room, just some of the beat guys. And he looked at us and he goes, you know, I really fucking hate you guys. He goes, not you in particular, just the whole media. I don't get it. I don't know why. Whenever we'd be up in Toronto and Montreal for the morning skate and there'd be 50 people around you just see like, oh my God. But sorry, Torts, it's part of the job, you know. But he's a hell of a coach. And I think sometimes he lets that stuff get in the way of it. But the idea was just never to take it personal. Like, you know, if he would maybe vent, and you're like, I'll let him have it, and then everything would be great after that. You know, some guys, and listen, I know getting yelled at is not ideal or being called out during a press conference or whatever, but we were always able to get along with each other. But I think, is a heck of a coach. I think he defends his players to a fault, and I enjoyed my time with him. He could be ornery, but Chris, he just doesn't want to have to deal with it. He just wants to go out there and coach, but it's part of the job. He doesn't suffer fools, and he doesn't suffer bad questions, and sometimes I think he's his own worst enemy. That's why Vancouver was not a good place for him. But I think in Philadelphia he's got them, you know, moving in the right direction, and I do enjoy him, and I do wish him success.
Yeah, he's definitely a character. When you look at characters of the game, and
that's important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, even if it's bad, like, what's wrong with hating people? What's wrong with having a character and some personality? You know, I love that. Even if it means that I hate the guy or think he's a bad guy, it still makes it fun to root against that guy or root against that player. Like, I love everything about Brad Marchand. I do. And does he irritate me as a fan? Do I need to see him, you know, lick somebody's face? No. But he's fantastic for the game because he adds a personality to the sport that sometimes I think desperately needs it.
Yeah. You know, and bringing him up again, that he has, and they had a talk with him, I'm sure, Neely and the management staff there, about, you know, you're going to be captain one day. You're going to start acting like one. You can't be doing all that shit. And he's really, I was surprised he's really made those changes to some of those crazy things, like I said, licking the face and all that. And then what he's done here to Toronto. And everybody thought when Bergeron was leaving there that, oh, it's not going to be good. And they've really kept that Bruin way, like the Patriot way back in the day. They've kept that. They kept their identity in a lot of ways, the Boston Bruins. And that's a credit to Neely, and certainly Don Sweeney's done a great job there. And Marchand himself making those changes. But boy, does he just friggin' kill the Maple Leafs there in these games.
Well, they
hate him. They hate him.
That Leaf team's a mess, and I just have a feeling there's going to be scorched earth when this is over. There's a lot of guys I don't think are going to be able to survive even though they made it out of the first round last year, to lose again to Boston and to be non-competitive if they end up getting, end up going out in 5. I would think there's some changes coming up there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. There has to be. I guess we were talking about coaches and media and stuff. And here's one for you. How about Bill Belichick? What did you think of Bill in the way he dealt with the media? Because, listen, I always had a good relationship with the media, pretty good. I wasn't, and I get it. As a player, a lot of times, it's bad shit written about the team, and guys are always saying, "Oh, those guys can't help us; they can only hurt us." Blah 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 blah. Belichick, certainly, in watching him, I mean, I would laugh sometimes. I mean, this guy is fucking he just does not give a fuck. How did you look at Bill when he would get up there and do that? Did you hate it? Did you?
I never hated it, but kind of like with Tortorella, it is your job. And as long as you're winning, nobody's going to care. It's like same thing with Popovich with San Antonio. Like, you can get away with those antics when you're 15-1 and you're going to Super Bowls, but all of a sudden, the last couple of years when you're not that good, now it's just stupid.
Yeah.
So I kind of just felt that it was unnecessary. I don't think it was shtick, but it was definitely something that got him off the hook from having to do something he didn't want to do. And maybe, listen, the NFL doesn't need public relations the way hockey does, but you do have a job, and we have a job in the media to ask questions and get our sound bites and all that. And I know it's kind of primitive and maybe in a lot of ways unnecessary nowadays, but guys are just trying to do their job, and you're just making it so much difficult for everybody else. I just thought it was unnecessary. I'm a fan of Bill because I grew up a Giant fan, and he was my defensive coordinator for 2 Super Bowls. And I think I get irritated when Tom Brady gets all the credit. The Bill Belichick would be nothing. Well, Bill Belichick took Cleveland to the playoffs when it was almost impossible to do, and it did take them to the playoffs after Tom. I don't know how you feel about it. I think it's 50-50, but that stuff kind of just that and the Popovich. There's no need to just be that empty and that mean. But did it bother me? Like I said, I
feel the same. Honestly, I feel the same when as far as Belichick and Brady, they both had such a huge part in that. And Bill, let's just take one of Tom's Super Bowls. That was a play, the one in Seattle. Okay, that was a defensive play drawn up by Bill Belichick.
Right.
Right. Him knowing that, and they knew that play was coming. And again, everybody say, "Why don't you run the ball? Why don't you run the ball?" And they didn't. They play, and they read the play perfectly. So when you look at one of those Super Bowls, they were going to lose that Super Bowl. And that's a direct result of Belichick and his defense. He was brilliant that way. And again, the only thing I didn't like, I guess when I saw the documentary that the latest one put out, and Bill looked like he was in a deposition for a murder case or something. I don't know.
Right.
I hearing, and you only really hear from the owner about, a little bit about how he treated Brady and when he drafted, what's his name, the other quarterback there, when they drafted him. San Fran. He's in San Fran.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, Brady really, he took affront to that, right? And it was almost like, we're getting ready to replace you. And he wasn't going. Brady didn't want to go anywhere. He wanted the reins. And I just really, that part I didn't like. I didn't like that part. But I 50-50, like you said, the two of them. Brady didn't do it on his own, and nor did Bill. That was a team thing they created. I think it was unbelievable era as far as New England fans. They don't have a these kids today, they don't have a clue of the pain and suffering those fans went through in Boston for so long with the Red Sox. The Celtics and the Bruins were pretty good, but then, the Patriots and the Red Sox, a lot of pain there, a lot of years. And that was a hell of a time to watch for being a Patriot fan. Anyway, let's I want to talk to you about some of that passion that you have when you're on the radio. And Evan Neal, the Giants, called out, the fan base and talked about the burger flippers. And I loved what you said there. And can you maybe give us a little preview of that and what you did and why you did it?
Well, what happened, it came down during the show. And I saw a tweet that he went after the fans, so I read it on the air. And if you watch the clip, and I've only seen it the one time, but people have told me about that, they can see how enraged I was getting as I was reading the story. And listen, I don't care about Evan Neal at all. I mean, he might be a good person. I don't know. But the fan in me is like, you know what? I just hate it when athletes completely piss on the fans as if we don't matter. You guys get paid. Football's popular because of how much fans invest in PSLs and the Sunday ticket and the buying the jerseys and all that. You have a job because of the fans. And burger flippers as if somebody who makes a living flipping burgers is like insignificant. There was like so many levels, Chris, of how he was offending people. And maybe he didn't put a lot of thought into it, but tough. Words mean something. You have to be held responsible for what you say. And I was just absolutely just enraged that this guy that was a turnstile, not being able to do his job, is going to call out the fans for booing. Do you know how hard it is to get a Giant ticket? You don't walk up to the ticket window on the Sunday afternoon and buy a ticket. They were handed down. And the only reason some people got into that building is because the Giants and a lot of these other NFL teams started charging PSLs and people couldn't afford to go. And it's $40 to park and it's $13 for a hot dog and $20 for a beer. And if I want to boo your sorry ass for not doing your job, that's what I'm going to do. And if you're going to call me a burger flipper and insult burger flippers and insult people, I really genuinely lost it. And because you can't. Our listeners are fans. I'm a fan. Fans, I think, are way more important than anybody gives them credit for. I think the owners take advantage of the fans. I think the players don't care about the fans. There's no union for fans. There's no protection for fans, and yet they're the ones that are driving sports. So I just felt like I needed to defend them in that moment.
Calling all hockey lovers. Upgrade your podcast experience by becoming an enforcer. Gain access to the greatest hockey doc ever, The Last Gladiators. And don't settle for ordinary. Join the Fight Club over on Patreon today. And then the other great one I saw was your friend Chris Russo, who I used to hear quite a bit in New York when I was there, the Mad Dog. And Imus, I used to listen to Imus all the time. And what was that all over?
I'm Chris trying to Russo. Remember. That was at the beginning of the season. Was it
retirement or something?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was, come on. That's just now. Because you know what that does? Now you're making it performative, right? And that's why people think I'm faking my rants. You're going to retire if the Diamondbacks win or whatever it was. Well, no, you're not. Then retire. Show me something. Retire then. Don't say something. Now you make everybody that does this out to be a joke. Like these athletes that I guarantee we're going to win, and then you take it back after they don't win. I think there should be some accountability. Yeah. And you say that you're going to retire, and then it doesn't happen, and then you see that then the Diamondbacks kind of used it, and I just felt that. Listen, we all have a little bit of performance in us when we do this for a living, but when it gets to be that far, then you're kind of just coming across like you're an actor, like you're just playing. And I don't think that's what it's supposed to be. But I love Chris, and the reason I don't worry about Chris being mad at me is because I think Chris would have probably done the same thing to me if the roles were reversed. So I worked with Chris at the Fan. That's where I started my career for 5 years, and a lot of what I've learned was from him. But I don't take it back, and I don't think he'd be mad about it if he heard it.
Okay, so. Looking at your career, the long career you've had, and do you ever have you ever looked back or had a situation where you said, "I wish I didn't say that," or "I wish I could have taken that back"?
I think not a specific moment because it's happened a bunch of times, but there are times, whether it's a rant or something, where maybe it gets a little too personal. You know, if I call a caller a moron, I shouldn't do that. His
Yeah.
point's moronic, right? But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean
Yeah.
he is a moron. But sometimes you kind of lose it. So, not a specific thing, but there are times where I'm like, maybe I should cool it with the name calling. That's a little childish. You don't want to get too personal. Um, I don't regret anything I ever said with Evan Neal because I was really upset. But like sometimes with a caller or a guest where we kind of going at it and I get a little bit too personal. Those are the only times really. You're talking off the cuff. It's extemporaneously, so not everything is going to come across as perfect. But those times where a caller really gets under my skin and I kind of lose it and start to name call, I'm like, you know what? This isn't the playground. I shouldn't be doing that. I should try to be a little bit more professional.
Yeah, it's funny. You said it off the cuff, and that's what the name of my show was here in Montreal.
Yeah.
It was funny because, it's good. Listen, I think growing up in the city helped me with that, hanging around my friend in the street corner and everybody being a wise ass and, giving it to each other. You had to be able to respond quick or, you were left in the dust, but
I wonder if there's a generation that doesn't do that. I feel like there's a younger generation that doesn't like the bus chops, that take it personal. I never took it personal because I got called worse by my close friends, by my brother. Like that's the way you went at it. And it was all fun and games and I'm not saying that the way that I grew up or you grew up was better, but I do think it toughened us up. Sticks and stones, right? That was always something we went after. You only really apologized if the fists came out, but as far as like going after each other's mothers or it was just like, all right, well, whatever. That's just kind of what you did, and I think it definitely toughened us up to kind of handle the wordplay that comes up sometimes during this.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at, today it's like, back in the day, you'd meet up, go play ball, play basketball down the schoolyard, you'd play baseball, you'd do everything, street hockey, all that stuff. And today you just don't see that with kids. Kids are, they're on computers. The communication interaction is not the same as it was back in the day.
No, it's antisocial now. And the pandemic certainly didn't help being shut in for a year and a half. But yeah, it's like my son loves sports and he plays baseball. He's starting to skate now, wanting to play hockey, but he also plays a lot of it on the video games too. So there is an antisocial way that I think a generation's growing up, but I think it's incumbent on us to try to make sure there's a time and place for all that stuff because interacting with each other is so very important.
So, let's get back to the Rangers. What do you think? Are they obviously? I think they're going to play Carolina. Do you think the Rangers go all the way this year?
Listen, it's going to be tough because you look at who they're going to play. I mean, Carolina is just as good as they are, right? They've got the second best power play, second best kill. Rangers have the third best power play, third best kill. They both have very talented forwards deep on the blue line. I think the Rangers got a little bit of a better goaltender. But and if you get lucky enough to get past Carolina, I think Florida or Boston, and I think it's going to be Florida. They're just a machine. So I think they've got every chance to win. There isn't a lot of weaknesses. Maybe their 5-on-5 play can be better, but if Panarin's going to play the way he played and Trocheck and that second rotation, they could be as good as any team in the league. But I have a lot of respect for Carolina. I called a game in March that they played in Raleigh. Rangers won the game 1-0, got a fluke goal by Fox. It bounced off a skate. There was no room. It was a nasty playoff type of game. I think this is going to be 7 games of up for grabs hockey. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think they've got as good a chance as anybody to go. I really think this is a fantastic team, but you got to respect the road. And if it ends up being, Carolina, Boston, or Florida in the next 2 rounds, that's a lot to ask.
Yeah, it is. It's going to surely be interesting. You look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 series now at 3-1. And, that is such a deficit to overcome. I mean, how many times has it happened? I know it certainly. Seen the Canadians do it against the Leafs a couple of years ago, but it's still difficult to do. And you look at that matchup, Carolina, Rangers, that's going to be a tough one, like you said, a battle. And then who do they run into next? If they get, whoever gets through that one, it's either Boston or Florida, provided Boston doesn't fall in their faces. So I absolutely love playoff hockey, right? I mean, there's nothing better. And this first round is like, it's the best. And after that, teams can settle in. But that first round, it's, everybody's ass puckers up because, man, this is the round you can get that fucking quick exit, right?
No, you can. You get caught flat-footed and the team gets hot. I agree with you. As you start to go on, things get a little bit closer to the vest. But I think that first round's wild. You said that there's 5 to 3-1. I bet you one of those teams come back from 3-1. Because that's just kind of the way it is. And I would not rule out Nashville. They had a really tough Game 4 loss, but Vancouver's goaltending's kind of a mess. Vancouver's never been in this situation before. I mean, I think Tockett's done a great job, but they're not a perennial playoff team, right? I mean, people were surprised by the kind of year. I have a feeling that series isn't over, but the other ones, I just don't think the Islanders have enough. I don't think Toronto has enough to be able to come back. LA, I think those series are over. But I give Nashville a puncher's chance to come back in that series. Do you?
Yeah. Listen, if there's a team that can, it's them. But, boy, Vancouver had an off game last game. And they did come back and scored 3 goals in 3 minutes, whatever, the end of the game. They end up tying the game, then win it in overtime right away. But I think they're going to be better prepared and more ready for this next one than they were last game. They were a little off. But like you said, if there's a team that come back, I don't see the Kings coming back. I don't see Winnipeg coming back against Colorado, Toronto, and then the Islanders. I don't see it, especially with the goaltender.
Yeah, I give Winnipeg a bit of a chance. I'm really surprised that Hellebuyck has not been. He's going to win the Vezina Trophy and he's going to get out in 5 games, and then they're not playing great in front of him either. So I'm a little surprised by that.
I'm surprised. Thing is, he has a bad track record in the playoffs. If you look at his numbers in the playoffs, they're through the roof. It's like that's crazy. Like, he's such a good goalie. He doesn't come playoff time. There's some guys that look at the coach of the Islanders. Boy, playoff time come around, that kid was in another zone.
Oh my God, yeah,
he's incredible. Well, listen, Don LaGreca, great to have you. And maybe we do this again sometime. You want me to join you at some point? Be more than happy.
Listen, I've read your books. I've listened to you. I always try to make sure that when I was up in Montreal, I'd say hello. This is a thrill for me anytime. Thank you so much for carving out time for me. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And if ever you want me on the game misconduct, because I've had a few of them, I think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to game misconduct. So, awesome stuff. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Awesome.
Shout out to Hall of Fame Member of the Week, Mike Foley. Mike, thanks so much for your support. We really appreciate it.